Fantastic. Well, welcome again. My name is Andrew McCaffrey. I look after the Accenture UK Alumni Network. You'll be well aware we have a quarterly event, normally in Fenchurch Street, where we bring in one of our experts to have a debate and a discussion on a set of topics. We moved our last event quarterly to a virtual situation as a result of the lockdown, and actually we had a fantastic response with kind of well over kind of 160, 170 people joining, and we've had much higher number of accepts today. So we're really grateful. It's obviously a forum and format that people are appreciating, and it'd be one we want to hear more about in terms of what you'd like to hear and what's useful to you as one of the Accenture alums. So today we're joined by Didem Urnatesh. Didem has recently joined Accenture's leadership team in February, and she's leading our data and artificial intelligence Europe practice that we've made within the Accenture Microsoft Business Group. And she's had 8 years prior to joining Accenture at Microsoft. Her last role at Microsoft was working on their Power Virtual Agent, which we're going to hear about shortly, but she's also had an opportunity in a COVID-19 crisis world to use that experience to look at how we can run a joint humanitarian initiative on that topic between Avanade, Accenture and Microsoft. You've only got to spend a couple of minutes on Didem's LinkedIn to realise how passionate she is about diversity and inclusion as a STEM champion, and we'll be talking very briefly about that. And she's also won several awards, including the Tech Women 100 Champion, Future Leaders Award, and a Diversity Role Model. So we're really lucky to have Didem on the call. I won't, without further ado, Didem, really throw it over to you to talk through what we're seeing today in terms of the big artificial intelligence trends. I guess you're going to frame it a little bit in what's changed with the new normal we're seeing as we come out of the COVID pandemic lockdown. And I encourage people to ask questions. They're going to come up on a moderated screen on the right hand side. If they're relevant at the point where Didem's talking, I will interrupt it. If they're not, we will make sure there's plenty of time for questions at the end. Didem.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Please introduce me in all my speeches. This was fantastic. Really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here. I really love being part of Accenture's Microsoft Business Group. As Andrew mentioned, I joined in February, and last 5 years before that was at Microsoft working on AI solutions, first with startups, and then as part of Microsoft Research, incubating business AI solutions, which, fortunately, some of those became quite successful. So my team and I moved over to the product team to launch those solutions. And I cannot describe how grateful I am, how honored I am to work with those solutions, expand them together with our clients at Accenture. So Andrew and Haley asked me to talk a bit about why now, why all of a sudden AI took off so massively, and then talk about the trends. I'll mention a bit about our Accenture Tech Vision 2020 trends and double click on AI trends and future of work, because I feel it's so critical in this period right now for us, all of us, to be aware of some of the things that are coming in an accelerated fashion. And I'll share a client story that I hope you'll like, because I feel it brings it all together in a very tangible, meaningful way. So why now? I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are familiar. There's absolutely, of course, the transformation we are going through with the cloud journey. And together with that, we have massive data, of course, which is truly the oil of AI, right? We have all of this big data feeding AI and ML, making it truly intelligent, which is the key thing. And on top of that, there has been some amazing innovation in AI and ML space. Just like we have 5 senses, like speech, like object recognition, etc., we have been able to bring these components, very critical components, building blocks of AI, to levels that are incredibly powerful. Actually, all of these things, object recognition, speech recognition, reading and comprehension, are already have surpassed human parity a few years ago. So individually, these functions are better than a human competence. However, it's the holistic altogether, just like our brain works, that we call general AI, has a bit way to go. And as of last year, It was about the age of a 5-year-old child. So I'm very passionate in this space. So I of course read a lot and try to keep up with all the trends. And some people say it will take 5 years for general AI to reach human parity. Others say it's not going to happen in a century. But totally, in my view, this is not an Accenture prediction or Microsoft prediction. By my personal, speculation, let's say, is it kind of averages out in the next 15, 20 years, it will reach human parity. And that's why I put down 2040. Take it or leave it, in 15, 20 years, how will the world be when we have machines who are equally intelligent or more intelligent and competent as humans? How will that life be, both professionally and personally? It's absolutely something that it makes me very, very curious. So if we move forward, when we think about AI, we don't just think about AI, or we shouldn't, if I may say so. There are some amazing technologies that are also developing in parallel. Mixed reality, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. There's quantum computing. And I'm sure you've heard of it as well. But just to make sure we are all on the same page, but what we mean by quantum computing, it's a quantum computer is able to do what a classic computer would be able to do in billions of years in just a few hours. Just a few hours. That's the level of computing power we are talking about. So when we combine these incredibly powerful technologies, mixed reality, AI, ML, quantum computing, of course, blockchain, IoT, etc., sky is truly the limit, and that's why I love this space. We just need to know what we are passionate about, what we care about, what problem we want to solve, whether it's energy or if it's cancer or if it's sustainability. Technology is there to enable it. It's just really up to us to decide what we want to go after. So it's incredible times. I sincerely feel extremely fortunate, extremely privileged to be in this space, and especially at Accenture. So let's move on to our Tech Vision 2020 trends, which were published earlier this year. And then, as I mentioned, I would like to expand on AI trends and future of work. Tech Vision 2020, the first trend that we see is I in the experience. What this means is the interactivity of the individual. So we want to own our own digital experiences, and it has to be unique to our own taste, to our own preferences, and of course respecting our privacy. This is what we expect as individuals and as communities. The second trend that we have focused on this year is AI and me, meaning how are we going to interact with the machine? What's our boundaries? What do we want to transfer to the AI to solve for us, and what do we want to stand for ourselves? The third one, I can't say I love this phrase, but it does hit the point. Robots in the wild. What we mean by this is, of course, automation, RPA, robotics process automation, is taking off. And again, this is a phenomenal technology where we need to make sure it lands in the way that we would like it to. There are incredible opportunities that this can enable in our enterprises, in our clients and ecosystems, but we need to make sure we do the testing, the beta phases, etc., very, very powerfully. And very related one, dilemma of smart things. This is basically all of these devices will be interacting with each other. They are already interacting with each other with IoT, smart buildings, and other devices. How are we going to move from beta to live? How are we going to implement so that they interact coherently and, of course, respectfully, bearing humanity and human priorities in mind? The last and the fifth trend is what we call innovation DNA, and it's simply none of us as individuals or organizations will be able to survive without innovating ourselves. And it's absolutely critical for success, not just success, but actually survival. And also, I think one of the important things that is essential for this trend is collaboration, the importance of partnering, importance of building our ecosystems, because not one single organization can actually innovate on its own anymore. We are not enough. Simply the world, the technologies, the interaction of technologies are too complex to do this on our own. And I will give some examples to bring this more to life, but all of these things are truly fascinating trends. I took the liberty to add responsible AI to all of this because I feel extremely fortunate to have worked for Microsoft and to be working for Accenture, because actually Microsoft was one of the industry leaders, is the industry leader, I should say, in responsible AI about 6 or 7 years ago. They were one of the first, if not the first, to establish AI ethics committee. First internally, it's called Ether Committee, that really set very high standards, both internally and externally, working with partnership on AI, just like we do at Accenture. We help not our own ecosystem, our own clients and organizations, but also the regulators, policymakers, legal advisors in making sure the technology is actually serving human needs, and human needs come first. So it's a subject that is very close to my heart, as Andrew mentioned in the beginning. Now let's focus on a bit. All of this is amazing. And it's happening. It was happening already before COVID, but none of it will happen in a good, how can I say, none of it will happen without the right skills, without the right talent. So that's why I wanted to take a bit of time to share some of the insights around what's happening to our society as we speak. 65% of students today will do jobs that do not exist yet. We're just talking about 5 to 10 years, not far out. So it's some of us as well. It's not just our children or the next generations, but all of us basically will be doing jobs that don't exist. I think this is a fantastic thing. I really do. I mean, some may be a bit intimidated by this ambiguity, but I would encourage all of us to actually embrace it. What this means is we should really think hard about what we as individuals, as organizations want to stand for, what we love doing, what we are passionate about. And really, sky is the limit. Let's write our own job descriptions, even career paths for that matter. So it's an opportunity to really shape the world the way we want to. Another important, I think, piece of statistic that I really like is 808 million individuals this year alone need to learn new skills to do their jobs. This is almost like a sixth or seventh of the world population. This is the reality of today. We're not talking about the future. And all of that, scarcity of technical talent. So I was on a call, a regional review, a data AI review with our teams yesterday. Every single market unit was kind of venting off about the scarcity of talent, especially in technology, data, AI, and it's such a reality. On top of that, transformation of work and skills is at a pace that, you know, especially post-COVID, is unbelievable. Diversity and inclusion remains to be a very important topic, and not just because it's the right thing to do and so on, but truly to ensure we are successful. Let me expand on this a little bit. In AI, I was there building products for the last 4 or 5 years. The products in the current space, 88% of the workforce is male, and you know, I'm not even going to go into minority situations. So when you have majority building products for the majority, even if they have the kindest of intentions, there's no way their perspective will be the same as the minority. So the products are being built by the majority for the majority. Data is biased. As we mentioned, data is the oil. Data is what makes the products AI intelligent? And if it's intelligent in the wrong way, we have big problems. And thirdly, automation is expected to hit the female and minority jobs the hardest, which like call center agents or marketing professionals or HR professionals. So this is why diversity and inclusion, even though it's been impacting our society for centuries, it becomes much more amplified and even more, I guess, serious in this age. And then purpose and culture. I mean, I think most of you, if not all of you, would agree, especially when I look at the new generations, pretty much none of them want to work for a company that doesn't have a purpose and a good value system and a good culture. This has become so important, and it's a good thing. You know, we all need to be larger than ourselves and larger than our organizations, helping our ecosystem. And this is absolutely a big trend that is paralleling the technological trends. And lastly, we're absolutely moving very fast from formal structures, formal organizations, to dynamic and real-time organizations. And I love, again, I mean, Accenture is one of the best places to be here because our hub and spoke model with different project teams running in parallel is exactly what our clients, what our ecosystems will need to implement as well if they haven't done already, because that's the only way to manage all these amazing trends shaping up. And of course, we'll have robots, as I mentioned. It's a reality. I mean, the river will flow only one way. So how is it going to work when we have, you know, technical, non-technical talent, female, non-female, etc., and our machines in our teams? Just to recap, European Commission expects almost half of the jobs to be automated in the next couple of years. And whatever new jobs come up, are created, or whatever jobs are left, 90% of them will require technical skills. And as I mentioned before, within AI ML specifically, 88% of the workforce is male. So we have these realities. I actually think this is fantastic because AI or ML and all these amazing technologies are simply putting a brutally honest mirror in our faces to say, society, you have some problems. And it's not, you know, some people say, oh, we need to fix the bias in AI. No, actually, it's the other way around. The technology is just being a mirror to who we are and what we are in our society. It's just allowing us to be more, let's say, confronting our problems more honestly and surfacing them very visibly to us. So I feel very optimistic that actually all of these trends will accelerate the resolution of some of the long-term challenges we've had to face in a very positive way. So one of my favorite books in this space by far is actually Human Plus Machine, written by our own technology leaders, Paul Doherty and James Wilson. And I hope some of you have read it, if not all. I mean, I would strongly encourage you if you haven't and if you're interested in this space. In that book, they talk about the missing middle. So we have humans on one side, machines on the other, and there's some important gaps we need to fill in to make sure humans and machines work coherently and collaboratively for positive results. One is trainer. We need to train both sides, actually, how to work together. We need also explainers. What does this mean? Like, what does a certain result when we perform a function with a machine, what does it mean? And both ways. And sustainers. We'll have all these autonomous systems, autonomous enterprises. How are we going to maintain them? How are we going to measure success, etc.? So, or deal with challenges when they arise. So some future job examples, AI ethicist. One of my closest friends at Microsoft is actually the lady who established AETHAR committee there, AI ethics committee. And she was telling me, I mean, she was studying computer science and ethics, I think 15 or 20 years ago in Turkey, in a university in Turkey. I'm pretty sure people were laughing at her at that time. I mean, not with bad intent, it's just that computer science and ethics, what are you thinking? But right now, she's one of the world-class, world-leading experts in this field because it's so important. There are so many big questions that, you know, tons of work streams under these committees are trying to establish and agree on. We'll need virtual reality architects. If we're talking about digital twins everywhere, we have to have the talent to build them. And human resources managers, something that I find very interesting. How are we going to measure performance when we have machines and humans? How are we going to resolve conflicts? You know, how are we going to, let's say, resolve a problem when something goes wrong? Is it the software programmer of the machine, or is it the user of the machine, etc., etc.? So these are some very interesting things coming our way. And top skills, I mean, needless to say, tech savviness, data literacy, critical thinking, all of these kind of engineering, math type skills will be front and center. But interestingly, soft skills will are gaining huge importance as well, like emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence, collaboration, leadership skills. And I love this. I mean, some experts, it's not my view, but some experts actually believe that the higher priority these skills will get, maybe we will be able to balance the inequalities in our society a bit better, because some scientists think that, you know, females, minorities have this better adaptability and so on and so forth. I don't know. I'm not saying it, but it's an interesting view. So I do think this is a very interesting picture that we will live. And this was all already happening before January, March, you know, this crisis happened. It was already moving at a fast pace. What happened after that? Like, as Andrew mentioned, what is the new norm? I don't know. The two short answers, I don't know. But we do know as a whole, I mean, we revised our Tech Vision 2020 trends publication. And the bottom line is all of those trends remain more valid, more relevant than ever. And they have simply accelerated, all of it. All of it. I mean, we have some very interesting COVID-related examples, but I couldn't agree more. AI as a whole accelerated. When I say democratization of AI, I mean especially low code, no code, pretty much became the norm, because people don't have the time, especially in a crisis like this where it's a life and death matter, to code for weeks and months and so on. So low code, no code became extremely popular, more popular than ever. And that's actually democratization of AI, because in some of the hackathons that we host, these solutions with high school kids, high school girls, in a few minutes, they're able to configure some virtual agents. Same thing with responsible AI. We are sharing data sets so we can find the vaccination for COVID. Some companies have decided not to sell facial recognition anymore. All of this stuff basically has accelerated. And AI at scale, I cannot emphasize, I'll give an example shortly, but obviously we just have to move fast and impactfully in order to solve these important time-sensitive problems. And lastly, upskilling, of course. I mean, we talked about future of work and the need for skills, need for technical talent. That has accelerated. You might have seen that Microsoft just a few days ago, I think, announced this amazing program to upskill 25 million people. So I haven't had the chance to yet discuss this with my leadership at Accenture, but I hope we very much collaborate with them to increase this number. This is exactly what needs to be done to make the most of this opportunity. I don't want to call it a crisis anymore. all of that good. We went through why now, what some of the trends, what happened with COVID. And obviously, I'm sorry, it's not, I thought about, okay, should we talk by industry or this and that? In an hour or half an hour, it's simply impossible to cover all the AI trends. But I'm very happy to do my best with the questions. But before we wrap up, I just want to share one example that really makes it all tangible. I mean, all of this talk might sound nice and so on, but actually it is absolutely possible. It's in our hands to implement and to make all of this real. So a bit of personal story here. My last social activity before the lockdown was a charity dinner. And it just happened that a gentleman advising NHS, National Health Services, was sitting at the same table. And he casually said, we don't even have a severe outbreak yet. This was early March. But the call volumes are through the roof. We've never seen anything like this in the history of NHS. And I have no idea how we're going to handle this when it really hits hard. Now, having worked on one of the AI solutions just before coming to Accenture, I knew we could immediately solve this problem and we could really help. So that weekend, a few of us from Alumni and Accenture got together to configure a power virtual agent, truly intelligent, truly AI-driven. I don't want to say chatbot, but maybe it's easier to relay the point. It's a virtual agent for COVID based on publicly available NHS data on their website. And within days, many clients all over the world, from Australia to South Africa to Ireland to North America, got very interested in this solution. And at that point, we went back to Microsoft and asked, shall we do this as a humanitarian program? I mean, would you like to waive the product fee? And we can configure the virtual agents free of charge, train our clients for a few days, and hand over in a week. So we could offer this to any of our clients around the world struggling with high call volumes. They said yes. Microsoft said yes. And we launched this program, which I have to say I'm very proud of. It was my 5th week on the job. And in parallel, life is funny. My father got hospitalized in Istanbul for COVID, stayed there for 39 days, 3 weeks in ICU. And on his first week at the hospital, I got diagnosed with COVID in London, was home treated, and I had relapses and so on, as I had some sick leave. All of this together, it's a bit hard to describe how meaningful this is for me, both personally and professionally. It was one of the best things in my career, probably, because it just puts everything together, everything in my past, professionally and personally. And then I think the best example implementation of this humanitarian program took place with Ministry of Health in India. So one Thursday, 6 a.m., we presented to this gentleman with the title Digital CEO, dotted line reporting to the Prime Minister of India. And he said he loved the solution and he said, I want this today. If you can build it so fast, then build it and let's roll it out tonight. Thursday is a good day to go live. And he said, this is simply going to save lives. I mean, given the size of India. So we built it in a few days, and funnily enough, they wanted this fancy UI and so on, but basically in a couple of weeks we were live with 1.3 billion citizens. Microsoft was there with us every day, making sure the scaling happened, impeccably. And within weeks, it was serving, it has been, I think these are not the latest numbers, I apologize, but within first month, it was serving 300,000 users per day and 20,000 concurrent users per minute. So this is what I mean by AI at scale. Responsible AI, inclusive AI. We weren't differentiating between the rich and the poor in India. We weren't differentiating between developed countries and emerging countries. We just did it. We just did it to help people, basically, help our world ecosystem. And I'm touched. I mean, our CEOs embraced this and presented in their joint announcements. We did some internal and external events to share this as a good story. And I would like to take 1 second to pay my respect to this gentleman, my teammate, Samuel John, who was our CAL, our account executive for Ministry of Health India. He passed away suddenly this Sunday. So it's been an interesting journey, I have to say. And it's, you know, he just did his best until the last day. And I'm so proud for him and for his country as well. I would like to leave on a high low note. I love this saying, Chinese proverb, when the wind of change blows, some people build walls, others build windmills. Let's be the builder of windmills and help ourselves, upskill ourselves and our families, our ecosystems. It's a fantastic time to be at Accenture and at this ecosystem. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Didem. That was really, really fantastic. We gave you half an hour. I don't think you could cover any more. I think you've hit on a few very key topics. We've got 5 or 6 questions in. I've got a few that were sent in before and a few of my own. But I'd encourage everybody in the time that we've got left to keep submitting some questions in there. We are going to try and cover all of them. I guess the questions are coming in, if I kind of group them up very quickly. There's some on kind of, you know, how far is AI going to go, a little bit around the ethics on it that we're going to touch on. There's a point being made on diversity and gender diversity. I've got a couple of questions on that as well. And then there's a question on, you know, what does this mean for jobs effectively? So we'll start working through these questions. If people have got any more, please do. We are recording the session, which means we might need to use your name. If you've got a challenge with that, let us know. It's only used within the kind of closed Accenture alumni group. So let's start with, where's AI going to go? You talked about kind of human parity, 15 to 20 year time frame. You know, I'd love to put a follow up in 20 years time, and we'll see how far how close we were. But I guess Miguel's asking, you know, some notable figures have said that human parity AI and beyond is potentially dangerous. What's your point of view on that?
Completely personal, right? I mean, don't tweet, please, because this is such a hard question, and, you know, absolutely not Accenture view, not Microsoft view. I simply think, you know, I'm very simple-minded in these things. The river will only flow one way. It's really up to us to embrace the change and make the most of it. And it's almost like standing up for our democracies, right? If we just keep quiet and don't do anything about it or pretend nothing is happening, then you lose it. It's the same. Yes, this technology has some risks. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But if we embrace it and use it to our advantage, sky is the limit. So some people compare it with nuclear energy 50 years ago and so on and so forth. So, right, we are all here, nothing happened. I don't know if that's a good comparison or not, but it does say something. And also the reality is, some of us on this call, I think, are old enough to remember the impact of internet on our economy. And many studies, including Accenture's, is confirming that this will be multitudes of the impact that internet had on our economy. So what are we going to do? I mean, we just have to get on with it and make the most of it. And of course, that's why responsible AI dimension is so important. That's why I'm very passionate about it. Okay.
And somebody has asked, isn't one of the great AI conundrums, the more intuitive AI gets, the less precise it gets? So when it gets close to human performance, it's going to make mistakes in the same way that humans do.
Sure. I'm sorry if maybe I don't understand the question. It will definitely make mistakes. In the beginning, more mistakes than humans do. But then, the reality is it will make much less mistakes than humans do over time. It's a matter of learning, basically. That's why the more data it has, the more precise it will get. Does that answer the question, or?
I think so. It did for me.
Okay.
And then just coming in on the same, I'm trying to group these into themes. Kind of.
Sure.
You
Thank you, Andrew.
Need to potentially look at kind of what the boundaries are of this, in the same way that we might have done with the internet. But one of the questions is, what regulation do you see coming in this space? Actually, the question I'd written down when you were talking through it was, you talked about this ethics board also at Microsoft. I'd love to know what were the kind of top 2 or 3 questions they were pondering on and struggling to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are quite a few big areas, and some of the work streams I remember are like, there's a huge area with bias. There's another area with accountability, open. We need to be able to understand how the algorithm was built. If something goes wrong, it needs to be transparent. It needs to be easy to undo. So some of these were facial recognition. So many work streams. We do need to divide and conquer in a way. In terms of regulators and policymakers, I think there was a related question in the beginning. Again, personal view, not Accenture's view. I think there's a huge gap, and it's not specific to AI. In general, technology is going ahead of regulation, and the scarcity of talent in law and policy making, technology talent, I mean, is part of the problem as well, ironically. Again, it is on us to help our ecosystems, to help these critical people understand what this technology, what these trends are capable of, to get their help. I mean, we just simply need to collaborate, because I sometimes, in the media, it's like, oh, big tech companies are bad. Like, no, they are all like, I mean, we are those people, right? We mean well. We don't want to launch a product that actually is negative in any way. People don't work for that, I would like to think. But we sometimes might not understand the implications or regulatory environment enough. So that's why it brings us back to the importance of collaboration, reaching out, really asking questions, challenging, just like good citizens, I mentioned. That's what we all need to do. Okay.
Just the next theme, it was just a point that Jen has made, is that, just a comment. Let's remember that women are 51% of the population. That's why it's extremely important we hire women to build AI solutions. So that's the question. I guess the question I had is, I read last year Invisible Women, which was a book about really how there's so much gender bias in the data that's just out there in troves. And there's lots of practical examples of it. The kind of size that kind of crash test dummies are built at aren't representative. The female population, there was, the temperatures in rooms are tended to be set for males that prefer a different temperature range. Well, I guess we could have a very big push to get an equal workforce building AI solutions. But how do we solve the fact that the data sets we might be relying on might have inherent bias in them?
Yeah, I think it's a chicken and egg problem. I would like to think both bottom up and top down the other way. So having been in this space day to day for the last 5 years, I saw that, all these things we've been experiencing for centuries are only going to get bigger and more important. So I happen to tick quite a few boxes in diversity inclusion category. Like, I'm a working mother. I'm not a religious person, but I'm Turkish, I'm Muslim. So some people label me as Muslim, and so on and so forth. So all of these things that I had already been experiencing here and there, on my path, became much more crystal clear in AI. So I'm a big believer, like the way I guess I was brought up is, if we see a problem, we need to solve it. And we have no right to complain until we have done our own homework as individuals, if I may say so. What I mean by that is we need to first encourage and inspire ourselves to upskill and be part of it. And you don't have to be a computer science engineer or a consultant to be part of AI. If you can, we formed a volunteer program called Alice Envisions the Future, or Girls in AI, to inspire high school girls join the space. And whenever I speak in some of these hackathons, I tell them, like, if you want to be a dancer or an artist, go be one. But if you embrace technology, AI, this, that, whatever is the disruptive technology, you will be a better dancer, better artist. That's all I think it takes. So it starts with us first, and then, you know, upskilling ourselves, and then our families, our ecosystems, our communities, and then top-down approaches. Of course, some companies, I mean, Accenture, I was so pleasantly surprised. You may find this funny, but the first day I went into Fenchurch Street and looked around and saw so many women around. I think there were like 30 or 40% of the floor was females. I was like, I must be on the wrong floor, because I was so used to the 90%. And Accenture is a fantastic leader in this, and I hope more companies will do this, but it's a two-way thing. You know, we cannot expect all organizations to be as advanced as Accentures of the world. It has to be bottom-up and top-down, and that's how the data will change, Andrew. There's no easy answer. I mean, if we artificially try to change the data or tweak some of the calibers, the technology will go crazy, as it does in some cases. So it has to be both, and that's why I'm optimistic. Maybe, I mean, some may call me playing Pollyanna, but I don't think I am. The faster we improve our own society, fix the discrimination, Black Lives Matter, all of these good things happening, the better the technology will perform, because it's not the technology's fault, it's actually us. The technology is just demonstrating it clearly.
Yeah, and I guess Derek's made a point, just saying, you know, the wider the learning data gets, actually the human skill is going to be in choosing the correct data set.
Yes.
I guess for that scenario, right? So
yes, exactly. Yes.
Good. We've got quite a few practical questions on the kind of implementation that you talked about there. But before we go to that, Pip was asking, I guess you talked about the kind of 65% of students today will have roles in 5 to 10 years that don't exist today. Pip's kind of got a broader challenge, which is surely as we move along this journey, won't the whole concept of what a job is change? So we might continue to work, but will that be in jobs? And I guess jobs is what we all understand, how we get paid and how we group bits of work together and how we organize ourselves. What's your point of view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's such a great point. It would have been a bit difficult to integrate to the presentation, but I'm so glad this came up. I agree. The whole way, you know, what is retirement? I mean, we will start questioning all these concepts that were kind of fed to us from birth. So you're absolutely right. It may be that we will have this, you know, universal things, but for me, again, simplifying it, just for my personal, I guess, preference, is we will need to be very clear, very honest with ourselves on what we want to spend our lives on, period. So it's quite ironic. I find it quite ironic. Who would like to cook burgers in a McDonald's? Which human? I don't mean to be provocative, but it's by default a robotic job. So I actually feel it's a good thing that these things are changing, and we will be forced to think larger and upskill and really determine what we want to go after. But it depends. I mean, again, if that's something you're passionate about, I would strongly recommend you to raise your hand and participate in the thinking, because we do need all those critical thinking to solve these problems.
Perfect. Interesting. So we're going to go into a set of questions just around the implementation you talked about and some more practical questions. Just before we do that, we'd love to hear everybody's feedback on what you would like to see in the next session, so feel free to put that in the window, or Hayley, I don't know whether you might be able to point the survey link. We will send a survey out after this as well, and it'd be really helpful. I mean, this is only our second one, and we're obviously lucky that Didem joined us when she did, but we'd always really love to hear from you that when we schedule one of these again towards the autumn time, what's going to be most valuable for you. Just turning to the more practical sets of questions, some of them around the virtual agent, you talked about Didem, and some of them are more broadly, right? Robert asking kind of, you didn't really cover the subject of conversational AI, so why are we still building text-driven solutions versus voice? So I guess it could still be the AI engine powering it, but the channel that, the human interface is different. What's your sense on that?
Did I get the question correctly? So it was like, why are we building virtual agents and not voice? Is that the question?
Why are we still building text-driven solutions versus voice?
Oh, okay, so wonderful question. And I just a few weeks ago, as of literally I think last month, I became the go-to-market lead for our product called Advanced Customer Engagement, which includes everything: voice, text, chat. So it's a great. We have to do it all, because it's simply, the eye in the experience, the first trend in tech vision. It also emphasizes this. All of us want different things at different times. I mean, I might prefer a voice conversation if somebody in my family, God forbid, passed away with an insurance company, and I might just not want to have a voice conversation with the government if I'm asking for a benefit. So we as Accenture, I mean, need to provide all. It just happened that Power Virtual Agent, this product is so powerful. It doesn't have an upper limit of intents or questions, citizen questions, customer questions. Microsoft itself uses it, for example. We started it with 30 intents, 30 questions, and in 9 months it was over 5,500 intents without coding. So this is self-maintained product, and I thought, at that emergency situation with COVID, just thinking NHS, we are all in the same country, we want to help NHS, that would be the appropriate solution. That's all. I mean, if I thought voice would be better or something else, of course, it just, I guess, serendipity. It worked out that way.
Okay, perfect.
And then, by the way, Andrew, please pass. I mean, I'm passionate about this space. I'm very happy to take questions offline. You have my contact information. I mean, please give me a few days. I might not be immediately able to respond, but very happy to expand more.
Well, I hope you've got a conversational virtual agent.
Yes, we do.
You've kind of let yourself down there. So a couple other more practical questions just before we close. Somebody, I think it was Gert, was saying, what would you answer when somebody asks how real implementable with some idea of timing this could be for their organization? I presume this is a kind of similar, I don't know what that means, an AI strategy or a kind of specific implementation of the Power Virtual Agent. So perhaps let's just tackle both. Sure. How long would it take to put an AI strategy in, and over what time frame, given current technologies, would it take for people to implement that? And if I've misrepresented your question, please just clarify on the panel.
Okay, I can, if you like, Andrew, I can answer in two ways. The long AI strategy is, I think, it really depends, okay, let me answer it this way. It really depends on the organization and culture of the organization. When we ask our enterprises, our clients, our partners, the roadblocks, the handicaps for implementing AI or a big transformational project with AI, the top factors, there's actually, let me see if I might have it in the appendices somewhere. There we go. Employee adoption. Culture basically comes as the top challenge. Some of the, you'll see here. So that's why both, Microsoft and Accenture rightly start with strategy and culture, because people need, I met with about 400 enterprises in my last 18 months at Microsoft. And the elephant in the room would always be people are scared. People are scared they'll lose their jobs, they'll lose their teams, ambiguity with their work in the future, etc. And that's very understandable. That's why responsible AI and being a trusted advisor to these organizations becomes a very critical success factor. It's not just fluffy, nice, touchy-feely topic. It's actually essential for our success to do this right. So that's I guess the time frames depends on the adaptability of our clients to embrace this as a cultural change, not in POCs and silos in this department, that department, but actually infuse it across the organization, from sales to HR to finance, and use it as an opportunity to enhance us as a whole, our job satisfaction and so on. And I really believe this. I'm not saying this as this is the packaging and so on. The shorter answer, if you were asking about Power Virtual Agent, how long does it take? It really takes a maximum 1 day, well, a couple of days, if you can sort out the contract work fast enough, because it's just a couple of hours. All you need for Power Virtual Agent to get going is 8 trigger phrases. So Xbox subscription or this or that, and then it starts the snowball effect to build it. All you need to do is a human, basically a contact center agent or contact center manager, to say, okay, yes, no, edit, because it suggests the answers itself from its own interactions. And the data makes it more intelligent. So if you want to really rapidly make it intelligent and functional, the more data, like 12,000 chat logs or voice logs, whatever you're able to ingest, will make it faster. Hope that helps.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Perfect. So I'm going to do 2 more questions. And I know there's been a couple of great suggestions on other themes, and we'll Hayley and I will take a look at that and make sure we can try to follow up on that. One question here, I'm not smooth. Somebody just talk about what's been the impact on the professional services offerings around data and AI. And this is Emma. So she's basically saying perhaps not Accenture, but smaller firms who might have offered data analytics services, they're now finding some clients are doing that themselves. And research and data consulting firms are struggling to see what their role is. So based on what you've seen out there, what sort of future professional services needs are there across industry, Didem?
All of the above. We need more. Like, clone yourselves if possible. I really mean, all we need is more of those professional services, more talent in whatever shape or form. It could be startups, it could be consulting firms. I mean, look, you're all Accenture people, right? We are there for acquisitions, and we just don't have enough. I mean, funny story, kind of funny story. At some stage, these big technology companies were so desperate for talent that I think it was Google, it's public news, so I can share. They hired all of Carnegie Mellon computer science department. I mean, it's crazy. So yes, there will be more, and especially as I mentioned, the acceleration after COVID, huge growth. Absolutely huge growth. I mean, I was speaking with some of my friends who are in human resources sector. They are like, health and technology are exploding, the others are shrinking. Microsoft is growing 30%. Isn't that crazy? I mean, it's wonderful, but it's just like, that's where the growth is.
Fantastic. So, Didem, that's been super interesting. I really enjoyed it. There's been extremely positive comments there, and I see some familiar names and faces, including some pretty key people that have been part of the firm over the years. So thank you, everybody, for your questions and comments. Just as we close, Didem, we didn't practice this or rehearse it. I'm now going to just ask you, what would you recommend people go out and read? Which blogs, which books, which sources to take some of these topics, particularly perhaps on the ethics side or the diversity side? What would you recommend?
Thank you so much. I have a long list. I get this question so often. I made a long list of, hands-on resources, labs, and so on, and then books and also some other links. So very happy to share that long-form resource as well. But the first thing that comes to my mind is Life 3.0, because it stretches our imagination not just a couple of decades, but actually centuries ahead. What could happen? What all of this could turn into with quantum computing and so on. So that on the AI side is, I think, one of my handbooks, if I may say so. Diversity, inclusion. There are I mean, so many amazing books. I think if it's for the females out there, I think there's a book, Think Big, Dream Big, I think. I apologize, I can't remember the exact title, but I can send it to those interested. It's just about how we can actually embrace an opportunity, turn it around, a crisis, I'm sorry, or a constraint, and turn it into an opportunity, a springboard for ourselves. It's basically the lotus in Buddhism, for those who may be familiar with. Yeah, very happy to share more, longer list.
Perfect. Perhaps we'll capture those, and I know Hayley does a write-up and a follow-up. We'll make sure they go up the right.
Happy to.
Listen, a huge thank you. I guess I'm always in awe of the type of people that join Accenture. You know, I've been here longer than I'd like to say, but Didem, you're one of the most interesting speakers we've seen. I've really enjoyed the prep we had earlier in the week in this discussion. I'm hoping we can try and get you working on some of my clients. So thank you for that. I think, to everybody else that attended, thank you for making the time. We've had a fantastic number of attendees, well over 100. I think we'd encourage you to continue to engage with the alumni network, even in these virtual times. If you liked what we've seen, please let us know. We're on LinkedIn. I posted earlier in the week. You can like on that, or you can drop an email to the UK alumni address that Hayley's put at the start of this call. We look forward to talking to you again and engaging. I suspect the next one will also be virtual, but we will get back to face-to-face as soon as we can, and we'll probably do a hybrid, to be honest, given the draw of audience this has had, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for having me.